Welcome, everybody, back to the Friar Talk podcast and YouTube channel. For today's episode, we are going to be previewing and then predicting this Padres Rockies 4-game series over 3 days. My mistake. Saturday is going to be a double header, so we are actually not going to be posting an episode tomorrow. You guys already get 6 hours of baseball, so I figured probably not the best day to post. But Isaac and Chase will be going live on Sunday after that game to go over the series recap and do that episode. But today, want to go over this 4-game series because Padres are about to enter a month of June that is one where there is a very, very light schedule. We had talked about surviving this road, and I know it's not all road, but like this tough stretch, and then you had the home series against the Mets. Padres end up going, 4-5? You get swept by the Cardinals, then you win the next 2 series. I think you take that in that spot because if you look at the rest of the month, it gets really easy. This series is going to be the Rockies. This is going to be the first of that bunch. And looking at the pitching matchups, I think you could probably say that looking at their numbers this year, the Padres have the advantage every single day. First one, Musgrove versus Cool. Cool's actually been the Rockies' best pitcher, but we've seen how good Musgrove has. He is probably leading Cy Young right now. Dude has been an absolute monster, and the Padres have almost won every single game that he's pitched in. He has a 6-0 record, and there's a reason, and it's that he's pitching deep into games, 7 innings, 6 innings, 8 innings, whatever it is, allowing 1 to 2 runs. It feels like every single outing is a quality start. And then on the doubleheader, the Rockies will be throwing Feltner, and then the Padres will be throwing Clevenger. Feltner struggled. He has over a 5 ERA. Clevenger hasn't pitched much, so I guess looking at that, you could say, well, that might turn into a little bit more dependent on the bullpen. Let's see how it plays out. Saturday, Freeland versus Gore. Freeland struggled this year as well. He has a 1-5 record. I mean, I don't think that's all dependent on him, but he has a 4.5 ERA. He's been struggling. Gore, another guy, maybe not in that Cy Young race because he hasn't pitched enough innings, but he's leading the Rookie of the Year right now, and I don't really think there's a question about that. Hopefully, he continues to hold on, build off another strong outing here. And then Sunday, Marquez versus Martinez. And even though I would say Marquez has probably pitched the Padres really, really well over the past few years, so this one is concerning. But right now he has a 6.5 ERA, and Martinez has been pretty solid. Like he's been susceptible to losing a little bit. I would say this is probably the most likely game they would lose, but looking at this series, it looks pretty positive for the Padres.
Absolutely. And that's not even mentioning the fact the Rockies don't have their star in Chris Bryant. They're going to be really relying on a couple of younger guys. It's going to be Blackman. It's going to be Garrett Hampton or something like that. CJ Owen. They're going to be relying on just a few guys. And if you shut those guys down, then, you don't really have a problem with the Rockies. They're last in the NL for a reason. They don't have the worst record, but they're down there. You have your strength in starting rotation, and right now your main concern is, is Martinez going to have a good game? Is he going to get you 5, maybe 6 innings? He will. He's done good, Rockies. I don't think it's too much of a challenge for him. It's really just going to be depending on his location. Is he going to leak down the middle of the plate again? But you realize he's out of the bullpen for this one spot start. It looks like just because of the doubleheader on Saturday that they brought him back. I believe they mentioned that earlier last week. But like Matt said, Musgrove been one of the best pitchers, if not the best pitchers in the NL. He is probably going to be top 3 in Cy Young right now. I don't know if he's number 1 or not. Mackenzie Gore has just been phenomenal. I know we've been saying that he's on an innings limit, but I wonder what the Padres are really going to do with that just because of how good Mackenzie Gore has been. We've heard 120 innings. I'm thinking realistically, if he continues this, he can go 150, but depends on what the Padres want to do with him. They do have Nick Martinez there, which they could replace him in the rotation, but with the way Mackenzie Gore has been pitching, I don't believe you can take him out. The Padres have been hitting like crazy the last 2 games. Hopefully they continue this. My main concern with this series is that every time the Padres and Rockies play together, it's either a pitching showout or there's no pitching and it's an offensive blowout. I mean, it was a couple of years ago when the last 4-game series the Padres had with the Rockies. It was like, 84, 87 runs scored between 4 games. It was absolutely insane. I don't think that's going to happen then, but there's always the problem with the Padres playing down to the level of their competition. we're supposed to beat up teams like the Rockies. Hopefully, everyone continues to hit. They had a great series against the Mets outside the first game. Hopefully that continues. But that is my main concern, is that they try to play to their competition.
Yeah, remember last year the Padres actually lost more games to the Rockies, or the Rockies beat the Padres more times than the Padres beat the you guys know what I'm trying to say. But anyway, I was going to go over the hitting stats for the Rockies, and you look at it, they're second in average right now. They're sixth in on-base percentage, 13th in slugging, 11th in OPS, and 8th in runs. So overall, they do have a good lineup for sure. Of course, it helps that you play in Colorado and you hit 600-foot nukes over there. But overall, they definitely have a good offense, even without Chris Bryant, who's been out the past 2 or 3 weeks and is not expected to be back in this series, I believe. So I think Chase mentioned it. The Rockies seem to always play the Padres pretty well. Like I said, last year they had a positive record against the Padres. So gonna see what happens there. But overall, their offense is definitely producing. It seems like their pitching is just what's holding them back. I wanted to look at their pitching splits because it's just a question, like, how is your offense so good, but you're losing so many games? And you guys mentioned the ERAs of guys like German Marquez and the other guys that are pitching. And I was actually looking at German Marquez's Baseball Savant because I was a little shocked that his ERA is so high, considering he had a solid year last year for a while up until the end. But you look at it, his hard hit percentage is the highest it's ever been. K percentage is the lowest it's been since 2016. Based on ball percentage is up there somewhat. He's just not pitching very well right now. Matt, you brought up his 6.5 ERA. He's definitely been lowly for the Rockies pitching staff. Nick Martinez, yeah, you can say you're concerned. I completely understand it. You look at the Brewers game and you see, well, he allowed 2 or 3 runs. And really, you just got to think of it like this. He was fantastic. It was just really one bad pitch that screwed up his whole outing. That one bad pitch made it look really bad. But he was really good. I thought he had a really good game against the Brewers. So I think our pitching rotation clearly has the upper hand against that Rockies rotation. You look at it, Joe Musgrove, he actually leads the NL in Cy Young. They did a poll recently on MLB.com. He is the number 1 guy right now. Mackenzie Gore looks like one of those top 5, top 10 pitchers in the league right now. Nick Martinez, just mentioned him. And then there's one more I know I'm forgetting. Mike Clevenger. Last outing, he only pitched 3 innings. It was Nick Martinez who piggybacked him. I was a little surprised that he only pitched 3 innings, but considering he came off a tricep injury, it did make sense. I believe it was only 50 pitches for Mike Clevenger, so maybe we see him go 60, 70. Maybe we see him go 5 or 6 innings again. We don't know, but I think that's kind of going to be the pitcher that I watch the most. You kind of know what you're going to get out of Joe Musgrove. You know what you're going to get out of Mackenzie Gore. And Nick Martinez is one of those guys. He's just going to keep you in games. He's not going to have a dominant outing, but he's going to keep you in the game. So I'm really interested to see how many pitches Mike Clevenger goes.
Yeah, that's something that's definitely worth noting. And I think you look at this series too. 4-game series. Now, I feel like the Musgrove and Gore starts, I would be extremely shocked if the Padres lost those games. But you bring up Clevenger, and you look at that game and you go, okay, well, the Padres should be able to win this game. Yeah, they should, but the question I have is, how deep does he go? And you brought that up. That's huge because that's also the first game of the doubleheader. So that's going to be a big factor. I'm kind of guessing that they would have thrown Gore in the first game if they weren't sure how far Clev could go. I don't know. Like there might be nothing there, honestly, at all. It might not really matter because like you're going to pitch him either way. But I just feel like you would want to save the bullpen a little bit for that second game in that day. But I don't know. We'll have to see because if he can go 5 innings, that'll be huge for this team. But this is a series where I think that you look at it from the Padres' point of view and you go, we should win 3 out of 4. And the goal of this series should be to sweep them. It should be to have a 4-game sweep at home. Like it really should. Because I think you have the advantage each day. And we talked about some of the guys in the lineup, and the lineup's actually pretty solid overall. Now, that is an aspect of that is Colorado, but CJ Cron is having a tremendous season. He has 14 home runs, 41 RBIs, has a slugging at 53%, right? 530, and an OPS at 873. So he's been balling out. And you look at some other guys in the lineup, Charlie Blackmon, he was a guy that definitely had a down year, but he's almost to an 800 OPS. He's having a little bit of a bounce back year. So big for him. He's quite a bit older. It it was hard to tell if he was just kind of done and just kind of got too old, but he's putting together a pretty solid start to the year. And then you look at some of these other guys. I think you mentioned him, Chase, Garrett Hampson, Jose Iglesias. They're putting up solid years, like decent playing time. Connor Joe, like there's just some guys that are doing pretty solid on this team. Brendan Rodgers, like just a bunch of guys that are okay. And then CJ Cron has just kind of been the catalyst to this offense. So it wouldn't surprise me if they end up taking one of these games. But looking at it from just like each game, the Padres should be favored in every single game in the series. So the goal should then be a sweep, I think. So it is interesting how it plays out. Also, one other thing worth noting before I turn it over back to you guys is that Padres are using a 7-man rotation currently. And we had talked about this of like, do they use a 6-man rotation? Do they piggyback? And just kind of all these other ideas. They've basically incorporated every different one that we've discussed and even more, because I don't think we really ever brought up the 7-man rotation. I think we're like, yeah, it's really unlikely that happens. They're doing it right now. They are in the midst of doing it where Blake Snell is it either Blake or Darvish, whatever ones were one day, and the 7 guys have now finished the series. So very, very interesting to see them use that tactic. We'll see how it plays out, but Chase, you brought up Mackenzie Gore's innings limit. We've talked about Clev and Snell getting stretched out. They've just used it in so many different ways, and it's really just the way that their rotation has worked has been completely dependent of the schedule. So I do like the way that they've used it. I think that you've already seen how big of an impact Bob Melvin has on this team, and I think a lot of the ways that he's used these starters has really saved the bullpen in a lot of ways. And it's a bullpen right now that's not at its strongest point. You have Drew Pomeranz potentially coming back. You just had Morahone come out for his first outing, right? Like some of these big arms are coming into the fold, and Padres have been able to prevent a lot of losses in the bullpen. Like they have blown some games and whatnot, but their starters have gone deep. They lead the league in quality starts. If they get that this series, there's a reason to believe you have a 4-game sweep. So that's all I have. But Chase, Isaac, anything else you guys want to add?
Yeah. Will this be the series that we see Jose Castillo or Michelle Baez? I mean, you have the doubleheader and you're allowed to bring up an extra person. I would probably pitch that it would be Jose Castillo. I mean, he's kind of been the most ready out of most of the relievers that are coming back. It was a surprise to see Morahone get picked over him, but Michelle Baez has also just gotten off the 60-day IL. Jose Castillo has still been doing his rehabs, appearances in AAA. He's done really well. Don't know why he hasn't gone the call up yet. I think it's just because of the lefty-righty ratio in the bullpen right now. When you look at it, you have Stammen, you have Suarez, and you have Steven Wilson. And I think that's it, just because Roberto Suarez went out. So you really don't have another righty. So in this case, I'm going to guess it's Michelle Baez. I want it to be Jose Castillo. It would be a great game. Kind of low leverage. It's the Rockies. A good way to get back into the a good step, but we'll see. Who do you guys think is going to get called up for that extra spot, though?
I kind of want to say it's going to be Castillo. Yeah, I know you kind of have a big conundrum with the whole righty-lefty ratio, but also I think he is better than Baez. You guys know I'm not the biggest Baez fan. I do think Castillo should get that spot, considering you want to get him back in the MLB. You want to get him some major league innings, and I think this is a perfect spot for him. You mentioned it against the Rockies. Like, I think it's a great spot for him. Matt, you brought up, like, wouldn't they want to save the bullpen for that second game? And I'm glad Chase answered my question. I was going to ask, do they still get an extra spot or two? And yeah, I think it would be a perfect spot for Jose Castillo because he hasn't seen the major leagues in a while. So I think it'd be fun to see him. He does get a lot of strikeouts. He is an electric pitcher for that year that he was an electric pitcher for that year that he pitched. And I'm really interested in seeing if he can still pitch in the major leagues. But I don't really have anything else. Like I said, the Rockies clearly have a good lineup. Yes, Colorado helps, but overall top 15 in almost every single important category, I believe it is. There's just their pitching that's holding them back, and that's where I think the Padres are going to kill them. They're going to have the pitching to win these games, really. I think Joe Musgrove is a lock. I hope, nobody comes at me if he doesn't win, but I really do think he's a lock for the W, and Mike Clevenger is going to be the most important guy to watch just because of his pitching, his pitch limit. We don't know what he's going to throw. Hopefully he goes 85 to 90. I think that'd be a huge step up for Mike Clevenger, and we're going to need him come July. So I don't want him to throw too much, but I think that's going to be important to monitor, and I really do think the Padres are going to take at least 3 from the Rockies.
Yeah, well, I think that'll probably do it after that. But I do have to say, I think I'm gonna have to disagree with you on Baez coming up because they've both pitched really well, and I do think it makes a little more sense to bring Baez up. I also think that you can throw Baez a couple innings, and it's not like I don't know. I think Castillo's still kind of working back. That's just my thought on it. The thing is, I was looking at it first, and because Baez had like struggled a little bit when he had been moved up to Double A, and we've seen how good Castillo has been. Like, I don't know if he's allowed to run yet, but he hadn't allowed to run for a while in the minors, like a good amount of innings. But Baez has settled in. He's only pitched 15 innings, but overall he has a 2.35 ERA, and that's in between Lake Elsinore and San Antonio. So he's bounced back in San Antonio. He looks pretty solid. So I think that it might be him. But I really want to see Castillo. But I think them trying to like slowly work him back makes sense. If he's totally ready though, bring him up because I think Castillo will be a better player right now. But I just think that their plan is to probably wait a little bit on him, and I think that Baez is probably likely to come in. Like maybe if say Clev goes 4 innings, maybe Baez will come in and pitch 5th and the 6th. Like I could totally see that being the case. Honestly, you can see Castillo doing the same thing. So I don't know how it'll work out, but it'll be fun to see. But I'm gonna guess it'll be Baez. But I think that's gonna do it for today's video. So thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you guys on Sunday after hopefully a Padres sweep or a Padres 3-1 win. But until then, we'll see.